The moment you stop chasing, their emotional safety returns. Avoidants often feel overwhelmed when they sense pressure, expectations, or emotional pursuit. The more someone chases them, the more their instinct is to create distance. But when you stop chasing, something unexpected happens. The pressure disappears. Suddenly, they no longer feel trapped, and their emotional defenses begin to lower. What once felt like an obligation starts feeling like a choice. This isn't about manipulation. It's about understanding human psychology. Avoidants value autonomy and freedom. When you constantly pursue them, they focus on protecting their independence rather than appreciating your presence. But when you step back and focus on your own life, they gain the space needed to process their feelings honestly. The silence you create often becomes louder than all the explanations you ever gave. They begin wondering why you're no longer reaching out. They notice the absence of the attention they once took for granted. And for the first time, they experience what life feels like without your constant emotional support. 2. Your absence creates the clarity they never had. While you were always available, the avoidant rarely had to face the reality of losing you. They knew you would answer, forgive, and return. Your presence became predictable. Unfortunately, people often fail to recognize value when it's constantly available. When you stop chasing, reality enters the picture. The avoidant can no longer rely on your energy to maintain the connection. The emotional safety net disappears. This forces them to confront a question they have been avoiding. What if this person is truly moving on? Distance creates perspective. Suddenly, memories become stronger. Conversations become more meaningful. The warmth they once overlooked becomes impossible to ignore. They start comparing new experiences to what they had with you and realize that genuine connection is rare. Your absence doesn't create feelings that never existed. It reveals feelings that were buried beneath fear, avoidance, and emotional distraction. 3. Nothing is more attractive than someone who chooses themselves. The biggest shift happens when your focus moves away from them and back to yourself. Instead of monitoring their behavior, you begin investing in your growth, peace, goals, and happiness. This energy is magnetic. Avoidants often expect people to keep chasing them. They become accustomed to being pursued. But when you break that pattern and choose yourself, you become unpredictable. You demonstrate self-respect and emotional strength. Confidence isn't telling someone your worth. Confidence is acting like you already know it. When they see you thriving without them, they begin questioning their assumptions. They expected you to remain emotionally attached. Instead, they see someone becoming stronger, calmer, and more fulfilled. That transformation often creates more attraction than any attempt to convince them to stay. 4. The silence forces them to face their true feelings. Avoidants are masters at distraction. Work, hobbies, social activities, and emotional distance often help them avoid confronting uncomfortable feelings. But your silence removes many of those distractions. Without daily contact, they are left alone with their thoughts. They begin remembering the moments they shared with you, the support, the understanding, the connection, the loyalty. At first, they may resist these feelings. They may try to convince themselves they made the right decision. But over time, emotions have a way of surfacing. The truth is that many avoidants don't fully understand what someone means to them until that person is no longer available. Your silence creates the opportunity for emotional awareness that constant pursuit never could. 5. Scarcity increases value. Human beings naturally appreciate things more when they are no longer guaranteed. This principle applies to relationships as much as anything else. When you are constantly available, your effort may have seemed ordinary, but when your attention disappears, its value becomes visible. The avoidant begins noticing what is missing: the messages, the encouragement, the emotional support, the sense of connection. They realize these things were never automatic. They came from you. Many people only recognize someone's importance after experiencing their absence. That's why doing nothing can sometimes be more powerful than doing everything. Not because you're trying to make them suffer, but because reality finally has a chance to speak for itself. 6. The power is no longer in their hands. When you're chasing someone, they control the pace of the relationship. They decide when to respond, when to engage, and when to withdraw. But when you stop chasing, the dynamic changes. You reclaim your emotional power. You're no longer waiting for texts, analyzing signals, or seeking validation. Your happiness is no longer dependent on their attention. This shift is incredibly noticeable. The avoidant suddenly realizes they no longer have the same influence over your emotions. And paradoxically, that independence often increases their curiosity and attraction. People are drawn to those who have a strong sense of self. When you stop making them the center of your world, you become more valuable in theirs. 7. The ultimate lesson. Let them experience life without you. The most powerful thing you can do is allow people to experience the consequences of their choices. If an avoidant chooses distance, let them have it. If they choose silence, respect it. If they choose to walk away, don't block their path. Because sometimes the greatest lesson isn't taught through arguments, explanations, or emotional speeches. It's taught through absence. Let them discover what your presence truly meant. Let them realize what they lost. Let them see that your love was a gift, not an obligation. And if they return, you'll know it was their choice, not the result of pressure or pursuit. The strongest position you can ever be in is this. You are no longer chasing anyone. You are simply becoming the person you were always meant to be. And that is exactly when the avoidant begins to wonder if letting you go was the biggest mistake of all. They start missing the version of themselves they were with you. One of the deepest realizations an avoidant can have is that they don't just miss you, they miss who they were when they were around you. Your presence may have brought out a softer, calmer, more authentic side of them. You provided emotional safety, understanding, and acceptance. While they may not have fully appreciated it at the time, your absence highlights the difference. When you stop chasing, they lose access to the emotional environment you created. The laughter, the comfort, the feeling of being understood, these things become memories rather than daily experiences. As time passes, they begin comparing their current reality to the connection they once shared with you. Many avoidants convince themselves that distance will bring relief, but after the initial relief fades, they often discover a different emotion: emptiness. They realize that the connection wasn't the problem. The problem was their fear of intimacy. And once that fear settles, they may begin longing for the person who made them feel genuinely seen. 9. Your emotional detachment becomes their biggest trigger. Avoidants are accustomed to people reacting emotionally when they pull away. They expect repeated texts, explanations, attempts to reconnect, or emotional confrontations. These reactions reassure them that they still have emotional influence. But when you stop chasing, you break the pattern. Your calmness becomes unexpected. Your silence becomes mysterious. Your emotional independence sends a message that words never could. You are no longer waiting. This shift can be deeply unsettling. Not because they dislike you moving on, but because it forces them to question assumptions they once held. They expected to remain the center of your emotional world. Instead, they see someone finding peace without them. Nothing creates curiosity faster than the disappearance of certainty. When they can no longer predict your actions, they begin paying closer attention. And often, that attention evolves into longing. 10. They realize love was never the problem. Many avoidants leave relationships believing they need more space, more freedom, or less emotional intensity. They assume the relationship itself is the source of their discomfort. But after enough time passes, they may realize something important. The relationship wasn't suffocating them, fear was. Fear of vulnerability, fear of dependence, fear of being hurt, fear of losing control. When you stop chasing, they have the opportunity to see this clearly. Without you constantly trying to fix things, they are left alone with the patterns they carry into every connection. They begin noticing that the same fears follow them wherever they go. This realization can be painful. It means accepting that the person they pushed away may not have been the problem at all. 11. Your growth makes them question their decision. The person who once begged for attention is gone. The person who constantly explained themselves is gone. The person who tolerated emotional inconsistency is gone. In their place stands someone stronger. When avoidants see genuine growth, it often challenges their perception of you. They remember the version of you that revolved around the relationship. Now they see someone building a fulfilling life, pursuing goals, and radiating confidence. Growth changes your energy. People can sense it. And when the avoidant notices that you've evolved beyond the version they left behind, they often begin questioning whether they underestimated your value. Success, peace, and self-respect are difficult to ignore. They reveal a level of strength that words never could. 12. They begin wondering if someone else will appreciate you more. One of the thoughts many avoidants rarely admit is this: what if someone else sees what I failed to appreciate? When you're no longer chasing them, they lose visibility into your emotional world. They don't know who you're meeting, what opportunities are entering your life, or who may be attracted to you. That uncertainty can create a powerful emotional response. Suddenly, they recognize that you are not standing still. You are moving forward, and the qualities they once overlooked, your loyalty, kindness, emotional depth, and support, are qualities someone else may deeply value. This realization often awakens a sense of urgency that never existed when they believed you would always be available. 13. They feel the weight of their own choices. As long as you keep chasing, the avoidant can avoid accountability. The focus remains on your efforts to reconnect rather than their decision to create distance. But when you stop chasing, responsibility returns to them. They can no longer blame circumstances. They can no longer blame timing. They can no longer blame the relationship alone. They must face the reality that their choices created the distance. For many avoidants, this is one of the most uncomfortable experiences of all. It requires honesty. It requires reflection. And it requires acknowledging that losing someone valuable may have been preventable. Growth often begins at the moment excuses end. 14. The energy you stop giving them returns to you. Every message you don't send, every explanation you don't repeat, every moment you don't spend waiting, that energy returns to you, and that is where true transformation begins. Instead of investing your emotional resources into someone who is unavailable, you begin investing them into your own future. You become more focused, more peaceful, and more aligned with your purpose. Ironically, this is often when the avoidant notices you most. Not because you're trying to attract them, not because you're playing games, but because you've stopped abandoning yourself in order to keep someone else. The greatest power is not making someone come back. The greatest power is reaching a place where your happiness no longer depends on whether they do. And when you reach that level of freedom, you become impossible to ignore.